But then I want to talk a little bit more seriously about what it means for us to be an ecological overshoot and why we're an ecological overshoot. So that's brought me to some interesting points that I'm keen to share with you.
Please.
Right. So one of the things that makes it difficult to talk about this is you'll run into people, especially very progressive people, who will want to tell you that it's basically a technology problem. That we haven't really overpopulated the world. You know, there aren't too many people. It's just a matter of how well we distribute the resources, and it's a distribution problem and a technology problem. So we can come up with new solutions about how to grow more food and so on. People in that camp love to diss all of the doomsayers that have come along over the years, starting really with Thomas Malthus, who was an English economist, I think.
Yeah, he's an economist, Malthusian theory.
And he noticed that, populations grow exponentially. It's certainly true. And when he looked at agriculture, he looked at agricultural output doesn't seem to grow exponentially. It only grows arithmetically. And so what that means is that, in the beginning, things are going along okay, but as time goes on, the population growth far outstrips the growth in food supply, with the obvious consequence that there's going to be both famines and competition. And competition among people usually results in violence and warfare. So he said, inevitably there's going to be starvation and warfare in any society at some point because of this simple fact. And this was 200 years ago. And then it turned out that actually no, because starting from about 1850 or so, we've started getting more and more food out of the same acres of ground. And by the time I was born, around 1960, there were 3.5 billion people, 3 to 3.5. They were all getting fed. And then the population doubled again. Now it's 8 billion. But the food supply not only kept pace, it even accelerated and got, it grew a little bit faster than the population did. Some people like to say, well, Malthus was just stupid. He obviously didn't know how things were going to work out. And you also have some other people like the Club of Rome with their Limits to Growth publication in 1970. Many people know about that. Their prediction was that food would start to be a real problem right about now, starting in the 2020s, along with other resource issues, and that population would see a dramatic decline. And yet here we are. So what's going on? Why does it seem as though all these predictions that we were going to run into problems with food and overpopulation just haven't panned out? So the bad news is that Malthus was right, and the Club of Rome people were right. And understanding why they were right and why their predictions failed, although, to be fair, the Club of Rome's predictions haven't failed yet, because this is exactly the time when they said things would start to get wonky. Why they failed is very important. And it wasn't until I read William Catton's book, Overshoot, that it really came into crystal clarity for me as to exactly what was going on. Throughout most of the history of our species, we've been opportunistic omnivores, which is to say, whatever environment we found ourselves in, we figured out what was edible and how to get it. So if you're an Eskimo, you eat seals. If you live in the Great Plains, you eat grain. If you live in the tropics, you eat cassava, right, and bushmeat, so on and so forth. So that all started to change, actually, from an ecological point of view. We're still eating the same food, but we're not exactly opportunistic omnivores anymore. We went from being omnivores to being detritivores. Let me unpack that word. Omnivores, of course, are a species that can eat a wide range of different foods. And lots of creatures are omnivores. A lot of very successful species are omnivores. So take the pig family, for example. Pigs are omnivores. Bears are omnivores. I raise chickens.
Well, he glitched. All right.